Good morning and welcome to today's live webinar provided by Seminar Web, a fully managed online learning solution. To our attendees, you can download today's presentation materials by clicking the blue hyperlink within the chat box. That hyperlink will be posted in the next 5 minutes. Additionally, you may submit questions related to the presentation or technical issues by utilizing the Q&A box, or you can submit comments and/or discuss this presentation with your fellow attendees using the chat box. Questions submitted to the Q&A box will be addressed at the discretion of the presenter and the host. Today's presentation is titled Clerk Training, Beginning Records Retention, and is being presented by Lucinda Messman. At this point, I will turn the presentation over to our speaker. Lucinda, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. Now, welcome to everybody. Today is Setting Up and Beginning Records Retention. This is one of those courses we get a lot of questions for during the year, so we decided let's get one set up. So let's get started. So records retention has got two main parts. The first part is safeguarding important records. The second piece is maintaining the integrity of those records. So those are the two key points I want you to remember for all of your records. When you're safeguarding records, you've got to keep in mind that those records could be decisions, policies, financial activities, road orders. I mean, you can see that. We're going to talk about more today as well. And maintaining the integrity, well, historically, everything was paper. Now we've got text and video, all sorts of stuff that we have to figure out what we're going to do with. So when we're getting going here, let's get back to basics. We need to determine what is a record. And the definition we're going to use here applies to records retention, all right? I want to be real focused on this. We're only dealing with the records retention definition. And this is an abbreviated piece of definition. I didn't put the whole statute in here. That's just too much to put on a slide. But basically, you can read here that government records include correspondence, reports, and other data or documentary material, regardless of the physical form received by an officer of the town in connection with the transaction of public business by an officer or agency. Okay, so this is just abbreviated, but that's what it is. Anything, any type of correspondence. It can be things like maps, it could be a picture, it could be something somebody brings in. There's a lot of information out there. Now keep in mind, I want to be real clear on this. Data practices is not the same as records retention. They use different definitions of records. And so keep in mind, since most townships are not subject to data practices, I'm not going to go into anything data practices and records retention for this course. Data practices, I put the statutes on the screen if you want to read them. But if you are a township subject to data practices, there's a few things there that may not be in our retention schedules, and you may need to amend your schedule. I'm not covering how to amend a schedule today. Go ahead, I put my phone number there. You can give me a call after the class or at some point when it's convenient for you, and I'll help you with the amendment process. It's not hard, but it's just like everything else. It's a process. Now, what kind of records have you got right now? Well, think about it. Minutes and payroll, that's pretty easy. Those are printed out every month. Claims and invoices, resolutions, emails, texts, photos, road orders, easements, vacation. I mean, we have a ton of records, all right? Clerks, that's what we do, is we do records. In our statute, it mentions 8 different times in the 8 job duties we've got that we are keeping records. So these records are really important. This is the history of your township, all right? So as we move forward and you're thinking about the types of records, I want you to remember, just because I have these listed here, that doesn't mean that's all there is. There is no way I can put every type of record you may or may not have. This is just a sampling. So why do we go to all this work? One of the things I hear from supervisors is, well, why are you telling our clerks to do this? This is a lot of time. This is a lot of effort. Why are we bothering? Well, quite simply, it's the law. Minnesota Statute 1517 states that government entries shall make and preserve all the records necessary to a full and accurate knowledge of the activities. Okay, that means whatever your township has done. So if there were a bunch of pictures submitted regarding some big event, trees down, some storm, and they submitted them to the town board. And based on those pictures and physical other evidence, the township made some decisions. Those photos just became part of the record that needs to be kept to have a full and accurate knowledge of what went on. All right. So there's a very good reason for all this work. So as a quick review, I put the statute up there again, but what's a record? Well, basically, it's anything with information relating to the township. I don't care what form, paper, electronic, voice messages, text messages, video. I'm sure there's more, there's going to be more as technology evolves, all right? And so that's something you want to keep in mind. As you can tell, this is the third time I've talked about what is a record. Our statute says record. Clerks, we deal with records. That is what we do. So this does get challenging, okay? I know that. What about text messages sent to supervisors? You know, how do you know if that's a record you need that needs to be kept? Well, it all depends. If somebody's threatening a lawsuit, that supervisor needs to get that record in a format that you can maintain. What about letters, voicemails, messages? I mean, if you don't know about it, you can't put it in the record. So if the board gets something that they want in the record, it is their responsibility to get it to the clerk. And board members need to understand this. So your new board members, when they come on board, make sure they know if they get messages that they feel are important for the township to maintain and hold on to, get it to the clerk. And that's our job as clerks, is to keep these records. Talk to your board members. We just did that. And you know, how often? Well, it's a great reminder at reorg time. When you're doing your reorg meeting, just remind them, hey, keep in mind, if somebody sent you pictures that need to be in the record, get them to me. All right. Sometimes this is one of the hardest parts, is getting the record from the supervisors, because they know about it, they took care about it. But in 10 years, when something comes up and they says, well, why didn't you do it this way? You don't have any idea because there's nothing in the record. So where to begin? How do you know if your township's participating in records retention? Well, there's this permission letter. It looks something like this. Can you find it? You know where it is. Was it filed under Minnesota Historical Society? Was it filed under notifications? Was it filed under township record retention? Was it filed under records retention? Can you find this letter? If not, we're not done. You're not out of luck. We got a few more things to try. How about the resolution? Again, we've talked about resolution books being so important to maintain. Here's a reason. If you had a resolution book, you could go through and look for the resolution where you adopted the records retention. Not out of the woods yet. There's another way to go. Next, you're going to contact the Minnesota Historical Society. Why? Because they do a good job on records retention. I've given you the website. You can click straight from the link. You're going to choose Government Records Management. And when you do this, you're going to make sure, and don't forget the township name and county for where you're located. Give them both. I don't know if everybody realizes I'm in Becker Township. Becker Township, there's two of them in the state. I'm one of them, and we're in Sherburne County. There's another one, and I think they're in Cass County. So make sure you give both the county and your township, give your contact information. They've got a record if your township ever started doing records retention. So if you know you're not following records retention, what are we going to do? Well, that's going to be simple. You're going to have the board complete the resolution. You're going to, and that's RR 2200 in the Matt Library. Now, if you give me a second here, I have got that on my screen. I just need to pull it up, and I went to the wrong part of my screen. So if we go into, here we are. It takes me a second. And records adoption. This resolution is on the MAT website. You see it's just simple fill in the blanks, adopted, town chairperson, town clerk signs. You can find that. Once you've done that, there is a notification letter. Again, this notification is on the MAT website. You're going to get this filled out and send it in. Now notice on here it says to send the original and a copy. That's because they're going to sign both and send one back to you. Once you've got the signatures from them authorizing right here, once they sign it, you can start doing your records retention. So let's go back to the other screen now. All right, here we go. I am not as quick with moving screen to screen. Right here, where'd it go? Well, we'll get it here. Sign and send in. The link is directly here. With the link for the notification of adoption, that's not a document like RR 2000 in the MAT library. You've actually got it when you're reading the paragraph about records retention. There's a blue link in that paragraph. That's what I've highlighted for you here. Now, don't start records retention though until the approval and your copy comes back. Until that time, you're not legal to get rid of anything. So I've got ready, set, go. Any questions on what we've done so far? I just noticed there's something in chat. Oh, good, that's the presentation. So the links are there, you can do that. All righty, so moving forward, take your time and pace yourself. How many years did it take your township to get to where they are? If nobody's done records retention in, let's say, the last 100 years, you're not going to get it done in an hour or a day, all right? It's not an overnight process. So give yourself the time, take some time, and let's get it going right. So the first thing you're going to do is print off a copy of the records retention schedule. That's document RR 1000 in the MAT information library. Looks kind of like this over here, okay? Once you've got that printed, grab a pen. You're going to need the pen because guess what? When we're moving through this stuff, there's a lot of different things that were real eye-opening to me when I started. And so I'm hoping to help you avoid some of the same scenarios. So I thought, let's start with something easy, minutes. That's something all of us usually know where they are. So we're going to start with last year's minutes or this year's, whatever you want. First thing, remember that list of dates we print out? Make sure every set of minutes is in the book or in your stack, however you keep them. Make sure you've got every set of minutes. Think about those other meetings like the local board of appeals, the board of audit. Did you have any special meetings? I know my first year I started, I would forget every now and then I had printed the minutes, but I didn't get them in the book of a special meeting. Local board of appeal was the one that I did the first 2 years, and I've gotten the hang of it now, but the first few years I would forget to get those into the book. Well, that's a part of the record. So I keep my list of dates for all my meetings, and I just run through and check them off, make sure they're in the book. That way I've got a nice, good record. So now we've got our record, we've gone through it, we know that it's together. So what's next? Well, we're going to look it up on the schedule. So we're thinking meetings, so let's look to meeting. And minutes is not there. That's a wonderful help. So you've got to think, where else could it be on this schedule? All right. You've got to look under every term you can determine. So we keep going, and now we find 2. Okay, good. There's 2, and look at that. One says fireproof, one says file. They're not the same thing, okay? This happens quite often when you're doing records retention, and so you need to decide what you're going to do. This is why we want the pen. So we see that minute books and minutes are 2 different things. One of them are to be fireproof, and the other one just says file. So let's talk about this location, retention, archive for a minute. I want to make sure you understand what those mean. So location, that's simply where are these records stored, okay? We want to avoid this. And believe me, I've seen records that look like this. It's never a good thing. You have no idea what just happened there. So where these records are stored gets to be very, very important. Now, can it be in a building like this? Yeah, it could be. What type of container is it in the building? Just because it looks like an older building doesn't mean the record's not safe. Is it in a container that's going to be bug and mouse proof and waterproof? All right. What about an open backpack? Well, probably not the best choice, but if that's where they're at, that's where they're at. A nice organized file. Now most clerks, we all love the idea. Nice, organized, neat. We can see it, we can find it. It's very simple to access. The container type is important. It has to be something safe. If your records are currently sitting in an outbuilding somewhere and they're getting eaten by mice, they're getting wet, they're getting moldy and musty, You need to take charge and remind the board, this is the law. We have to keep this stuff. And you want to prevent any further deterioration. So in that location, remember it says in statute 1517 that government entities have to make and preserve all records to have the full and accurate knowledge. This is the statute you're going to tell the supervisors about when you say, hey, I would like a fireproof filing cabinet or fireproof storage system. Where are we going to put this? Now, you want to make sure this stuff's accessible. I know I've talked to people who have microfilmed all their records, and that's wonderful. Do you have a machine to read it? Where is the microfilm located? Is it accessible still? Or has somebody lost all the microfiche? All right, you want to make sure you know what's going on there. So with the minute book, the best practice is to have them in a fireproof permanent storage. Now these days, with all the digital things, you can also think about putting them digitally in the cloud somewhere that has backups on a server somewhere. I actually display some of my old minute books now because they've all been digitized. I have my permanent archived copy. In addition to my cloud storage, I have a permanent copy. This might be a bit of overkill, but it's on a disk, a disk with the right drive, and I've got that in a safety deposit box in the bank. So I know my minutes for the last 150 years are current, and there are backups of them. They can easily be seen if somebody has a computer, if these books go up in smoke. I have a town hall that has burnt down before, so minute storage is important. If you don't have an office, a fireproof file cabinet that moves from clerk to clerk is always a good idea. You can rent a storage facility. I talked to some clerks, and that's what they did, is their two townships went together and they've rented an offsite storage facility that's rodent-free, and that's where they store their records. It works really good. So you can think outside the box. There's no one way to do this. Other townships have gone even a step further, and they have rented temperature controlled rooms. So whatever is going to work for you, think about it. Digital's the option. I put think outside the box. I can't tell you, keep thinking. Talking to other clerks is a wonderful way to learn some new ways to do things. So the next up is the retention. How long do you keep the record? Well, if you look here, these two are permanent. The minute books, the category above is only a 3-year retention. So you look at this to see what it means. Now these Rubbermaid containers are really nice, and if you have them in a room that doesn't get infested with mice, bugs, wet, stuff like that, they work well. But if otherwise, they don't work if you're just going to go put them out in a barn somewhere. The paper bag method does not work. I don't care where you're putting it. That's maybe if you have a temperature controlled room and everything, but those are not the recommended options. Okay. The best practice is to come up with some sort of a cabinet, preferably fireproof. So then we're going to look at archive. That's the last column. So what does that mean? Some of those say yes and some of them say no. Well, an archive, according to Webster, is a repository or collection of information. Okay, if you're going to archive information, that means you need to be able to read it in the future. So just because you take all your minutes, throw them in a paper bag and put them in a box and put them in a room, that could be archived. It may not. It depends. You've got to look at all the details surrounding it. All right. Now, ideally, an archive is something that you can acquire information from as well. Like when I go to the History Center to look up something, I can go over there and either pull out a book or use the film reader and find the data. So now that we kind of understand the columns, we're going to start taking some notes. Remember, this is a how to get started. So we've got our minute book. Keep in mind that with those categories, those mean two different things. Take your time and write on your retention schedule, okay? Physically write on it so that the next clerk knows what you did. Which one are you going to use, minute book or minutes? And then if the minute book is a conglomeration of minutes for a given time period, keep in mind those books need to be kept somewhere permanent, fireproof. Keep them in the archives. That means keep them safe, keep them nice. Make sure they're not going to get mouse eaten or bug infested. And the minutes, those are going to be subdivided as categories, okay? So this minutes, on my interpretation, now if you interpret it different, that's okay, but write down what you're thinking. My minutes, I subdivided it as I've got my regular minutes, I've got my annual meeting minutes, and I've got my closed meeting minutes. And they're three separate categories of minutes. That's what my interpretation was. Maybe yours is by quarters of the year. Maybe yours is something else. However, you're going to subdivide them. But then the entire group of minutes for the year go into Fireproof archived files. All right. So now let's put it together. We're going to look to see what the record retention says for the next topic, which is agendas. Well, great. On the top of page 1, you're going to find agendas. We put them in a file for 6 years and we don't have to archive them. Then we go to meetings and we get agenda on page 8. They go in the file book and they're permanent. And it says, yes, we have to archive. And you're thinking, oh, goody, this is helpful. All right. Not really. This you're going to find in a few different areas of the records retention schedule. What's the right way? Well, I don't know. What are you going to do when you don't know what to do? That's a pretty common thing that we come up across as clerks. That happens to us a lot. Well, talk it out. 2 heads are better than 1. Do you have a deputy clerk? Do you know another clerk? Do you have a supervisor, a treasurer? You know, talk with some people. You can talk with quite a few people and find out what are they doing, what's going on. You know, and if all else, call one of the trainers. We're happy to talk through it with you. We're probably going to ask you some questions. Okay, you've got this record. This is what it says. And we'll help you try and figure out a category or why one category fits instead of the other. Regardless, once you determine what you're going to do, keep it simple and write down your choice. Consistency is the important part of this whole thing, all right? You've got to be consistent when you're writing things down. Make it easier on yourself and the next clerk. Believe me, I know when I first started, I didn't always remember to write down what I chose, and then I lost that list, and it was a real mess. Nobody touches my records retention list now because I've got so many notes on it of how I'm doing things. With my agendas, I consider my agendas perfect. All right, or perfect, not perfect. I'm sorry, that is the wrong word. With my agendas, I consider them permanent. Other people don't. Well, which one's right? It really depends. Don't you love that attorney answer? Those of you who have been clerks for a while know that's exactly what the attorneys usually tell you. It really depends. Do you use agendas for every meeting? Do you follow them? Do you never use them and you only have them on occasion? If you only have them on occasion, it may be that 6-year retention works for you. I have agendas every single meeting. So for me, they get incorporated into the permanent retention. You have to look at your township, how it runs, and your records. Okay, so any questions to this point before I skip forward into the next part? I don't see any. I want to make sure that I'm checking my screens right. If you have them, you can always ask them at the end too. All right, so let's move forward and we're going to look at the meeting agendas. We've got the permanent, we've got the 6-year. Whatever you pick, I don't care. I want you to write it down on your schedule so that you follow the same method every time. Some things are pretty cut and dried. I mean, look at this part. Check stubs, you keep them in a treasurer file for 6 years and they're not archivable. That's wonderful. That's so easy to follow. We can date them. We can get a group of them. Our clerk receipts, the same year, you put them in a file. Now this here says treasurer file, and then another one says box by year and file. Well, does that mean that you have to keep 1 box per year? No. Some of you may not fill up an entire box per year. Just because it says in a box by year, it could mean a folder. It could mean a rubber band. I mean, they've got those nice expanding file folders. I've seen a lot of clerks and treasurers in smaller townships who can divide those and they just do 1 of those per year. That's perfectly acceptable. Whatever's going to work for you. Now the check stubs, keep in mind that 3rd check stub, if you're using the CTAS program, is to stay with the treasurer. Unless you have a town hall where you're routinely filing, then they could end up going with the clerk. In my township, we decided that we staple them to the back of the claim because my treasurer and I both work out of town hall and we couldn't see the reason to have a separate file. The reason that it works But with the claims and vouchers is they're both 6 years. So in this case, we kind of combined the two. So that's what my note on there says. Now the clerk receipts, you can file those again. Maybe you put them with the bank statement. Maybe you put, I don't know how you keep your receipts, but they're a 6-year retention. Now that we've got some stuff to get rid of, let's look at that records destruction schedule. It's called the Records Destruction Report on the Minnesota State Historical Society, and I've given you the link here. For some reason, at one point, this report was really difficult to find. So if you hang on to this presentation, you'll have that link always, and you can go get the report. So when we're going to fill out the records destruction report, some of it's pretty easy. So we're going to use Lavender Township with Lavender as a clerk and Lavender Road. Anyway, sometimes I just kind of get goofy on these. So you're going to fill this schedule out. Okay, you're going to do it according to your records retention schedule. You're going to show a copy to the board once this is all filled out. You're going to record in the minutes that this was shown to the board. This is a really key point in records retention. You may have these schedules, but you need to get it into the minutes that these record retention schedules were reviewed by the board or that they were presented to the board. It doesn't have to be elaborate, just a one-sentence thing, but something that they were presented to the board. And then you file them with the town clerk. Well, that's pretty simple. You're going to put I keep a file folder. I'm assuming you're going to do something similar, a file folder, a book, and you put them in there. It's nice and simple. I recommend 1 sheet per box, and you're going to see why later. Okay. So with our records retention, let's go through a sample of this. The first thing is the general schedule name or agency. That does mean use this records retention and filing system for townships. All right, this goes with this. It tells the History Center, tells whoever asks for a copy of this report exactly what schedule you're following. The next, it says what section of the schedule or where is the record listed. Well, I'm going to skip down up here to roads. This is the first method. There's a couple ways to do this, and we're going to review both of them. So the first one, I put the section as roads, all right? And then where it says item number is listed, there's no numbers on this report. So I put in gravel hauled. You know, you see it right here that those have to be filed every 10 years. And I have 2003 and 2001 gravel hauled tickets. January tell when they're destroyed in cubic feet. We'll get to all this stuff later. And then I also put some contracts in this box, and they're whatever the contracts were for snow removal, January, December. I do use the little quote mark thingies coming down instead of typing that every single time. I could use a smaller font, but I want to make sure you could read this for this presentation. So I'm just taking the information straight from this report and transferring it here, and then I put down the dates and what it is. Where it says record title, it says use the same name as listed on the schedule. Well, I've kind of got these columns a little mixed up, and it's on purpose though. Instead of, since I don't have an item number, I'm using this name. And so then I use what I call them. Gravel hauled is not quite what I call the tickets. I just have 2003 gravel tickets. All right. So whatever your township calls it can go here. So this is the first method that you can use to fill out these records destruction form. Make sure you take the time to fill out these forms, because legally this is the only way you can get rid of records. So there's the first method. Method 2, you notice there's numbers here. Well, I took time and numbered these 1 through 9. So now number 9 is, well, my numbering got off up there. This should be a 10, is gravel hauled tickets from 2000 to 2003, or 2003, 2000, 1987, and 1998. I got rid of all these gravel tickets, okay? And then we went contracts with the county. Again, my numbering is kind of messed up here. I apologize for that. But this should be a 5 for contracts with the county. We got rid of the 1998 contracts with the county. Both of those, you'll see gravel hauled has a 10-year retention. Contracts with the county, unfortunately, I have a box on my screen, is 6 years is a 6-year retention. Okay, I moved the box on my screen. So this is the second method. The only difference between the two is you can put the words here and then what you call it in your township, or you can number it and then put the title here. There is no right or wrong here. You're going to use what you like best. All right. I like this because if somebody looks at it, they know exactly what I'm getting rid of. I also like this because you know exactly what you're getting rid of as well. So use what works for you. So then you file these things with the township clerk. That means you need somewhere to file them. Again, we're going to hit on, do you have a nice, do you have a nice file cabinet that you can use? Archivable, fireproof, that's the word I could not remember. Sorry about that. Write down what method you're going to use and for you and the future clerks, because if you don't write it down, I guarantee you're not going to remember it. Trying to remember stuff really gets to be the issue that people have. You know, you're doing really good for the week while you're doing file records retention, but then you get busy or an election pops up and you've got to go for a while. And then 6 months later, you come back and you're looking at this record thinking, what in the world did I call it? How did I do my paperwork? So you want to make sure you can find this stuff. So moving forward, here's a sample of one. I like method one. That's just the one I like. We've got it filled out, and here's a 1.5 cubic feet. One of the big questions I get, do we really have to do this? Well, yeah, you're supposed to. So then the next question is always, well, how do I come up with cubic feet? So here's a real quick little tutorial on that. You measure your box in inches, and you're going to convert it. So you take the length in inches times the width in inches times the height in inches. That number divided by 1728 will give you cubic feet. So we look back here and I put in 1.5 cubic feet. When I'm doing records retention, one of the things I do is I use the same size boxes, because as you're destroying records, you don't have to destroy the box. So I have 1.5 cubic foot boxes. They've already been measured. And guess what? I go until I fill them up. So I make this list, and you'll see in your packet, this is a 2-page document. So the second page doesn't have all the header stuff. It's just more space. So when I'm doing this, I put a couple of sheets of paper. I've got this stuff recorded, and I start filling my box. As soon as my box is full, and it's all stuff that can be destroyed, I know that it's 1.5 cubic foot. I put that at the side, and then I can destroy that box of information. The other thing to keep in mind is if you are doing these boxes, you can get them ready ahead of time. So I have one box that says destroy in January of 2024. The reason is I had some files that were getting really, really big, and I knew that that's when I could do the destruction for them. So I just wrote it on the outside of the box. It's sitting there by my regular box that I fill up all the time. And I know that that stuff can go then. It also, you know, it's not ideal, but it's what I've got because I ran out of room in my file cabinets. And I know I can go to the box, I can get the data, and I know when I get rid of it, it's 1.5 cubic feet. Okay. So I've got some helpful links on here as far as with preserving records. If you've got a record you're not sure about, so some of those things that might be, what about MP4s? That's a more common record. Those come in sometimes on phones. How are you going to keep this stuff? Well, you may need to figure out, you know, most phone messages can be forwarded to a computer, and then you could store them on a flash drive or something. This link also gets you to a bunch of the various forms that we talk about. And there's a lot of subcategories here. I'm hoping this works because I want to go into this. Okay, good. Are you seeing the Minnesota Historical Records site now? I'm really hoping that's the screen that you're seeing. Let me see if, I don't think you are, so let's do this. Now I hope you're seeing this screen. It should say Minnesota Historical Society. This is something I did not give you. Let's go to the Q&A. How do you destroy? Okay. All right, so we got a question. How do you destroy the documents, shred, recycle, etc.? Really great question. I'm sorry, I should have answered that before we went to here. I've done all, any and all. You get to choose. The statutes are silent on how to destroy them. Now you need to consider what type of record you're destroying. If it's payroll records, you really want to make sure they get shredded or burnt somehow securely, okay? That's got private data on it. You don't want that getting out. If it's old claim forms, you can do about anything you want, and you can just, you know, I know one time we were having a fire, so we just added them to the fire. It didn't matter. The records were destroyed. It all worked. I've hired shredding companies to come in. I have a shredder here. If I never had this happen, but I keep thinking maybe I'll have time and I can shred a box for the day. It's your choice, okay? So on the Minnesota Historical website, which I'm thinking you can all see now, here's an electronic records management guide. We have so many electronic records now. I highly recommend anybody who has got them to take time and go through this, okay? There are so many of these that we want to be sure you get to see. There's strategies listed here. There's digital imaging. There's digital media. It talks about file formats. It talks about file naming. One of the sections you really should take some time if you're going to be doing digital storage is understand metadata. Understand how it works. Because when you're dealing with metadata, and let me make sure this is showing on your screen. Good, it is. Basically, metadata just means what's that data about, okay? So when you've got these electronic records, you need to be able to search them. One of the things I did, now my township did digitize all of our minutes for the last 150 years, almost 150 years. In January, it'll be 150. One of the things we did before we digitized them is, this was to the clerk and the deputy clerk, my deputy clerk helped me, we read every stitch of minutes from 1871 to the present. And what we did is we kept a list and we put down the date of the minutes and if there were any important keywords that we needed. What type of keywords are you going to look for? Things like Nelson's Road, okay? It may not be called Nelson's Road now, but there was a clerk, three or four clerks before me whose passion must have been roads, because he has the original road names. It says Nelson Road, and then he has what the name changed to, all right? Because our road names changed with all the 911 stuff came in. So some of these roads changed names 3 or 4 times, and this clerk has got all those names listed for me. Now, there were a few that changes after he was gone, but it was so nice because I have those. So I can see Nelson Road is now 137th or whatever it happens to be, because a clerk took the time, made a sheet. Now this sheet, yes, I have digitized it because I didn't want to lose it. And it records what all the different road names were. And that list, we're currently under the process of taking time to get that list put so that every road has what all of its different names have been in its file. So this metadata, this is one of those things that the board may think it takes a lot of time, and it truly does. But by us going back to our minutes and reading through, we can go through and I can quickly find stuff that relates to roads, because I know, okay, I pull up a road, it's got 4 different names through the past. I can type those 4 different names, and anything in those minutes, all of a sudden it comes up on the screen. And it's very simple for me now to go in, and in 15 minutes I can do what normally, I remember one of the searches they asked me for took me almost a year to get completed because of other stuff in the way. But once you get this stuff digitized, make sure you are using some metadata. If you are going to use digital, I cannot stress that enough, okay? It is so important. I mean, I'm not gonna scroll through this whole thing, but I just wanted to see that it's data about data. It's, what is this set of minutes? Now, I could have used, these were July 17th, 1920 minutes, but what good is that gonna do me? That doesn't help me. Taking the time to say Nelson Road or 2 Mile Bridge or whatever it happened to be, those are keywords that mean something, so I can go back in and look it up. So I cannot stress enough that going in to this electronic management system, taking some time to go through, how to do this based on what your township will be using, because all of us do this stuff differently. All right. Not everybody I know is going to go out and use digital management and put everything in the cloud. Not everybody is going to have 15 file cabinets to sort things into. You need to do this so it works for your township. If you don't use computers to do the stuff in your township, then you're going to stick with the paper filing methods that are listed in here as well. If you're on this site, you'll see that there's research services, but then there's records retention services, records retention schedules are here. And the records disposition panel those are the people who, if you have to amend the schedule, you're going to go in and speak with them. Okay. Any questions? I went to the wrong screen here. Any questions on the electronic management? I'm not going real deep in it today because there are so many things that we could go into. But I want to make sure you see where it's at. I gave you the link so that if you are going to use electronic management, you've got the support here on this page, and where you can call me with questions. A couple other notes on electronic. If you decide to go electronic, think about your township residents. Can all of them still access the records? That's another big part about records retention. If you're keeping these records, and let's say for some reason there's a new technology out and you decide to use it to store that record, can somebody other than you access that record? If so, you're fine. But if you're the only person who can access that record, have you really kept it so that other people can see it? Keep in mind, when we go back to our definition, and this will take me a second to get my screens back to where they were. This screen. When we go back, and I'm going to back up here a few screens. When we go back to that archive definition, one of the things I really want you to keep in mind when you're doing stuff is, can other people access these records? Can somebody, if you're not there to help them, find them? Because just because it's in an archive, if it's on microfiche and you don't have a reader, how are they going to see it? Okay. Now, okay, we've got a really good question here. What happens if a prior clerk destroyed records without completing the steps to track what was destroyed and putting it in the minutes? What proof do I have I didn't do this? That is an excellent question. I should have thought to put that in the presentation. I like that one. Happens more than we want to know, when we want to think. I dealt with some of that myself. You're going to be real honest and say, and get this in the minutes. These are the records I have. I know that 1960 to 1972, I can find no records of that time, and you get it written in the minutes. Then, if you find them, because maybe they were put in a box and nobody said anything, you can put it there. Now, if they destroyed old claims and stuff and you don't know about it, you can't do anything about it. You are only responsible for the records from when you became clerk. So that oath of office you filed with that date on it, that starts the date of when you are responsible for township records. So if you've been a clerk for a while, even if you're a new clerk, I don't care, and you know certain records are missing, the most important step you can take now is to put in the minutes, there are no claims or records for 2015. I don't know where they are, or I don't have them. You're going to get that wording into your minutes, because guess what? 2015, you're still supposed to have with you. So get that stuff in the minutes. Now, when we talk about claims, I will say briefly, a lot of people think the claims stay with the treasurer. The treasurer tracks all the finances, but the clerk is responsible to retain all those invoices. So ideally, what's happening is once the treasurer's got their record complete, they get all those third check stubs. Those invoices are the responsibility of the clerk to maintain, all right? So you've got to know where they are at all times. Again, with your archive, you want to make sure if you know something's missing, put it in the minutes, because your minutes are your legal document. Your minutes are your record of what you do or don't have. I know I went for like 6 years before I found 2 or 3 years worth of minutes. They were filed differently than everything else. That happens, so you're just going to go with it. and you just write it down in the minutes. And let's see if I can get my screens. There we go. Now they're moving again. And I'm sorry, I've got to go through this way because I'm jumping back and forth, and getting to the right screen is taking me a few minutes. I'll stop for a question here. Can you explain what the difference is between the minute books and minutes? Yes, again. Yeah, yes, I will. So the minute books, I'm actually going to go to a picture if I can get there. The minute books is the conglomeration of the minutes for a year. Now, in the past, minutes used to be, they called them minute books because all of your minutes were written in this great big hard copy book. They were bound, and you just wrote them directly in the book, and the book was for however many years it took to fill it up. Minutes these days, most of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are typing them on the computer and printing them out. So my minute books these days is I do one every, I think it's 2 or 3 years. I'd have to go look to be sure. I use plastic sheet protectors. I slide my minutes into there, and on the outside of the book, it'll say 2015 to 2018. I'm on one now I just started a new one for 2020. So it's got minutes 2020. By the time the whole year is done, that will be the minute book. The minutes themselves are individual, just the specific days. I'm hoping that's answering your question. If it's not, please let me know, and I'll try and rephrase that. But the minutes refer to the specific set. The book is the year worth of records, roughly. Okay? It could be a couple of years if that's how you do them. All righty. Good. I'm glad. Sometimes it's the one of the most difficult things with the web classes is making sure you understand the questions correctly. I know I've answered some in previous ones completely wrong, not intentionally, but because I understood it to mean something else. So with records retention, we've got all these different records. Okay, we talk about the records, we talk about the location, we talk about where they're at, and we talk about retaining them. So we've got a few minutes to talk about storage or other items. So are you supposed to keep 2 copies of the minutes, one in the book and one separate? Good question. No, you only need to keep 1 copy of the minutes. Now, that said, is that the best practice? It depends on your township. I keep 1 set, it goes in the minute books, but I also have my set that I've made into a PDF, and that goes out on my website. So I only have 1 physical, and that's the signed copy. The one that's not physical, I have a digital copy out there as well. As far as what you have to keep, which one counts? Both of them. Either one of those works as your permanent record, because remember, records are records no matter what form. So if you've got them all digital, that's okay. If you've got them all physical, that's okay. You have to think, how are the people in your township going to access those? All right. That's kind of what happens is you've got to remember access, because access of these records is really the key thing. Once you've got these records done, a lot of us can keep records, but can anybody else access them? And one other thing, while we're talking records retention, if by chance you're using minute books, the old big books, which is perfectly fine, and somebody wants to come in and look at them, you're going to need to watch them while they're looking through, because you don't want to take the chance of somebody damaging one of your sets of minutes that is written physically in a book, okay? Those handwritten minutes, until I had them digitized, anybody who came in and needed to look at old minutes, which I had a few, I had to either myself or my deputy clerk sit with them while they're going through them. We gave them a pencil and some papers so they could write stuff down, or we offered to copy the pages for them. But you have to be sure in those books, those minutes that are handwritten, that they can't make a change to those physical minutes. That's one of the reasons, if it's possible for you to get your books digitized or copied or something, that you really need to figure out how you're going to archive minutes. So my digital version, I can send those to anybody and nobody's going to be able to change them. Even if they have PDF readers and they can go through and edit my PDFs, that's okay, because I have the originals. I have the original physical set I have the original digital set. The physical set I have just because it's easy. I've got quite a few. There's a good portion of my township that doesn't use computers. And so when they want to see minutes, they always want to come in and they'd like to see the physical set. I usually find out what minutes they want and I'll go ahead and print them off for them just because I use everything computerized. I print off the digital sets and hand them to them and they can take them with them. If they want to see the original ones, I do let them see them. I offer to make them copies. I do not let anybody else handle the original minutes at all possible. Those original minute books, you just don't want to take a chance because sometimes all of us have done this. Even if we print out our minutes, sometimes a change needs to be made and it's a simple one-word change. And we're in a hurry, so we get it made on the minutes. And then it'll be a while before we have time to go print another set and get another set signed. And sometimes those minutes stay with that scribbled out part in your hand. If you do that, make sure and initial it so that we know it's a legitimate change. All right. Is there a company you can hire to digitize the records? That's a great question. I actually used ArcaSearch. That's one of the companies that works with Minnesota Association of Townships, and they did not destroy my books. That was a big problem that when I was looking to have our records digitized, a lot of companies said, well, yeah, we'll take your minute books, we're going to slice them apart, and then we'll digitize them for you. Well, that kind of defeated the whole purpose. These are cool old, I like old books. And these are cool old books because I've got the original hand for the first clerk of the township was clerk for almost 40 years. And I can see through his handwriting how you could tell that he was pretty young when he started. And by the time he was older, his handwriting wasn't as neat. I mean, you could still read it and all, but I didn't want to destroy the books with that or destroy those records. So that is why I chose ArcaSearch. I'm sure they're not the only ones out there, but they did a wonderful job for me. If you want to see what their records look like, I'm not trying to plug them, but you can go to my website, my township's website, beckertownship.org. You go to the minutes link, go to the minutes page, and there's a link to archive records, archived minutes, and you can see what they turned out like so that you can kind of get an idea. I know that was one of the things I did request of them before I went with them, is because these are our records. I was kind of picky and kind of nervous when I first started, is let me see what you've done for some other communities and other areas. All right. Okay. So that's kind of what I've got for you today. I can answer any question you want on records. I can go further if you'd like, but that's kind of the beginning. Basically, you've got to make sure, one, that you've got the records. Two, if you don't have it, write it in the minutes. Third, find out if you're actually participating in records retention from the Historical Society. All right. Oh, ArcaSearch is ARCASEARCH. If you think of it and don't mind emailing me, I can double check the spelling of that. I've got a pen of theirs like on the other side of the room, and I'm on a microphone. If you don't have your video on, I'm on a microphone. I'm kind of attached to the computer, and I didn't want to just leave and go grab it because they gave me a pen and it's the name on it. If by chance you were at the MAT annual meeting and picked up one of their pens, they're orange and it's got the company name on there. Okay. All righty. Let's see. Let me make sure. I think I've answered everything. And so now, this is just me. When you are in one of the classes, I know these classes cost money to do. If you don't mind, I'm going to go a little further on records research until we are done because we've got about 5 minutes left, unless there's any other questions. And I'm not seeing any pop in. I think I've checked everywhere. If Deborah, if you see something I haven't answered, please let me know.
I certainly will.
I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And I'm going to pull up a different screen and talk about a few other things on the records retention. Let's find the screen. Here we go. We'll share this. Let's get into this schedule. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. All right, so you all should be seeing the records retention schedule on your screens. A couple of the areas I do want to point out since we've got the time. Look at this appointments section. Now, it talks about appoints and commissions. So if you've got a planning commission, that's life of appointment, deputy clerk. Here's some of them. Now, the oath of office, that's 10 years after the term. One of the questions that I get, let me see if I can make this highlight. So when I've got an oath of office, one of the questions I was asked, one of our supervisors had passed away, and his wife wanted to know, it was unexpected, if she could have the stuff that he had written on. An oath of office is one place that he had done a signature. So what I did is I photocopied, he'd been a supervisor for a long time. So anything that was over 10 years after his death, I gave her. The rest of them I will be giving, no, we gave them to her last year. We had to get to the right time frame. All right. So that is one of the things I did find out, I didn't know about, that had come up. Officer resignations. See, those have to be kept for 10 years after the term. Some of you have had a supervisor or some officer resign. And when I say, I know we get calls that it's like, get it in writing, whether they write it, I've had to actually write it out and have them sign it for me before and date it. It can be an email, it can be a text. If it's a text, you got to figure out how to get that printed out. I forward my text to the computer and print them out, and keep that in their personnel file. So that's a couple things that you need to keep that I know come up quite a bit. Another one that comes up is when you're looking for all of your financial records. Oh, elections. If you have March township elections, this whole section has got almost everything that you need. Most of it's 22 months. Some of it's some rule books and stuff are until superseded. Employee things, some of those are permanent. If you look, if you use the AWARE program, and some townships do, some don't, some of these have got 30-year retention, okay? And that's after the employee has retired. It's really important on something like this. Let's say you had employees and now you've gone to no employees. If you've got to keep something for 30 years and you're on records retention, put a note on there somewhere for people. Just make it obvious, especially if the problem or whatever happened and you're aware of it, get that written out, because some of this stuff, it's really hard as a new clerk, and I've had to do this, I know you have too, when you're going through a box and you can't just judge the box based on the file name. You've got to look at every piece of paper. I have found permanent retention items. I found a set of minutes shoved in a bunch of insurance paperwork. I'm assuming the clerk was busy, was doing something with insurance, and accidentally grabbed the set of minutes and they got shoved in there. That's why it took me 3 years to find them. When I was going through there, I go paper by paper to make sure of something shoved in. I found some really interesting stuff, but you want to watch that. With para, you've got some things on here too. This section, take your time to read through the employee stuff. Also, when you get into the financial accounting, this is where you find the levy. I know somebody called me the other day and they couldn't figure out where to put a copy of their certified levy. Well, those are permanent retention, okay? Most of us keep it with the annual meetings, but the certification of the levy, that letter or whatever you send, you're supposed to keep those permanently. And if you know that they're missing, let's say you don't know what the levy was for the last 5 years, get it into your minutes, okay? So those are kind of the areas that you're going to make a lot of notes for. My copy of this that I have personally is so scribbled up because I've got all these notes and arrows as to, one, it could be that we call it something different. I know that when it comes to, let me find it here real quick. When it comes to, it was something with roads, we called it something different. Oh, road petitions. One of the previous clerks did not call it petitions, but it was roads requests or something like that. It was road petitions. So part of it is finding out what your township calls it and get it written on this report. It'll make your life easier. Okay. And so with that, I've not seen any more questions, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. If I've got my time right here, I think we're at 10:29 and we end at 10:30. So if you have any questions, feel free to email or call me after the presentation at any time, and I'll help you out.
Thank you, Lucinda. This concludes our session. I would like to thank our speaker for her participation and thank all of our registrants who attended today's program. Certificates of attendance and evaluation forms will be emailed to live attendees within 24 hours. We ask that you take a few moments to provide us with your evaluation of today's program. I invite you to visit your association website for a list of more upcoming programs and hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.